Greetings, everybody. This is Mike with Healthcare Leadership Live. Look, before we get started with the show, which is a good one on staff compensation, if you are interested in leveling up your HR, hiring better, retaining your staff better, staying HR compliant, and you know that you have room to improve how you do those things, please reach out to me at Seasoned Advice HR. I specialize in ophthalmology, human resources, as well as other healthcare specialties. But I would love to be able to help you with that. Reach out to me if that's something of interest. Now, here's the show. Greetings and welcome to Healthcare Leadership Live. This is Mike Lyons, and I'm going to be talking to you today about staff compensation. This is an episode with just me talking about something I love to discuss, which is staff compensation. And why do I love that? Because what we pay our employees is so important. It's so important. It's not just a dollar that's coming out of your pocket. It is an investment. Every dollar you spend in your clinic is an investment. So whether it is a new camera or whether it's spending on a technician, hiring a technician, or giving a front desk specialist a raise, you're making an investment. And basically, with an investment, what you're saying is, if I put this money into this thing, this person, this item, this real estate, I'm going to get a return on that. And my firm belief is that the investment in people is one of the best investments that you can make. You've got to manage them well and all that good stuff. But paying people is super important, and you want to pay them right. If you underpay, it's going to affect your ability to hire. It's going to affect the morale of your staff. It's going to affect the retention of your staff, and it's going to affect your productivity. Because if you pay low on average, if you pay low across the people in your clinic, then on average, you're not going to get the best employees, all things being equal, because that's just how things work. Better people tend to go to better places. Now, yes, you can have better management and you can have other perks and benefits and things, and those things can offset pay to some extent. But all things being equal, you need to pay competitively. So pay is important. So, how can you make sure that you're paying well? Well, you have to do research. You have to do research, and it takes time to do this kind of research. And it takes money sometimes to do this research. But you can do it, and it's worth the time investment because labor is very likely your largest expense. And so do you make, let's say, a real estate decision without professional help? Do you pay your real estate agent a commission for their expertise and guidance? Do you pay a lawyer to review your contracts and help you make decisions? Well, think of how much we spend on labor, and very few clinics get professional guidance on how much to pay. They don't do their research on that. They don't do their research in a lot of areas when it comes to HR, but how to pay people is something that very few clinics invest thought into, and they don't invest money into. And so it does take expense to do it really well, to do it right. But there are some things that you can do. You can research compensation rates in your area, and there's different ways of doing this. The first thing you need to remember if you're going to start researching compensation rates is there is a wide variety of information out there. Some of it's good and some of it's bad. And so you're going to need to sift through the good and the bad, especially if you're doing this for free. If you're willing to invest the money and get a tool like a PayScale or ERI, or pay for a salary.com subscription, or pay for other surveys, and I do recommend using more than one data source when you're doing compensation research, then paying for those surveys is a really great way to go. But if you're not going to do that, you're going to get a variety of results. If you just go out and look for an ophthalmic technician pay rate, you're going to see $15 an hour, $25 an hour. And sometimes it may not make sense why one pays more than another. Now, if you look carefully, you can see some of those differences, but they may not always be apparent. And so you need to pay attention to the job titles, the job descriptions, how much experience is involved with the job when you are doing benchmarking. You may see one job that requires a COA and 5 years of experience, and another job that doesn't require a COA and maybe requires 1 year of experience. The duties can be very different. And so if you're trying to benchmark your technician job and you're out there and you're looking at job postings and free surveys, then you need to make sure that you're comparing your job to the other jobs, on an apples to apples basis as much as possible. Meaning, does it have the same responsibility? Does it have the same job requirements? Does it have any supervisory responsibility? Is one hourly and one salaried? These are all differences that can make benchmarking very challenging. And this is another reason why paying for a professional survey really helps. It's also important to know, are there things about your job that are maybe more annoying? I call this the annoyance factor. So do you have your technicians travel? You might want to pay more if your technicians have to wake up early in the morning and travel to different clinics. That's if you're in retina, for example, or some specialty where you travel to other locations. Do you have some unique skill sets that you're requiring? Do you need to be able to shoot fluorescein angiograms or other types of specialty imaging that is not normal for an ophthalmic technician, for example? Again, if we're just talking technicians. So keep all of those things in mind. So that's number one. Number two is, because there's so many different data points out there, I like to make a list. Make a list of all the different data points you found. I found a job posting that said this was the rate. I found a public website that said this is what technicians pay. And one thing I glossed over, which I should have mentioned, which is you need to make sure you're looking at the right geography. If you're in Chicago, but you are finding benchmarks in, Rockford or Champaign or Peoria, which are other cities in Illinois, those pay rates are not going to correspond, and they're not going to be valid for Chicago, just because it's a different labor market and people demand more pay in Chicago than those cities. So you need to have some way of filtering on geography. And a lot of these public surveys do have that. So beware of that and make sure you're focusing on that. Another thing you need to be looking at very carefully as you're looking at pay data is how many people responded to a survey. Like, let's say you get a survey from a professional association. Let's make up, the Global Eye Association has a compensation survey. So you need to find out how many people responded. How many people responded in my city? How many people responded about this particular job title? If you look at the data and it says only 3 clinics responded, and it's for the whole southern United States, well, that data is not really great. That data is questionable. It's a little bit suspect. And so you need to look at the number of respondents in any kind of survey data that you get. Would I necessarily throw it out? If there's only 3, I might throw it out. I'd love to see 8 or more respondents on a survey. For the specific filter you're looking for, your location and that job title. I want to see several responses before I feel comfortable with that data. Sometimes these free surveys, they don't have good geographic data. there might be a national survey, and yeah, maybe there's a southern, western, northern, but just not enough respondents. Sometimes these free surveys that you might get on salary.com or Indeed, it may not be very clear what the job description is. So it might say ophthalmic technician, but maybe you have ophthalmic technician and senior technician and lead technician, and it's very difficult to compare apples to apples. And so that data then kind of becomes useless, because how do you know what you're comparing to? Another thing to think about when you're looking at a compensation survey is how old is that data? Sometimes the data is over a year old, and these days, with inflation being what it is, those pay rates are very likely to be out of date if they're more than a year old. Professional level surveys are continuously being updated, and they also have formulas built into them to help triangulate, to the current day, and extrapolate what is that pay rate for that job title in this location today, because they can age future date, the data that they've got, if they don't have up to the minute data. And so there's definite advantages to having paid data. But if you gather enough data points, you find enough free surveys and enough free data, you can start to circle, the target with what a good pay rate is going to be. And so, do you have to pay for a survey? I personally would, but, you're going to have to do a lot of legwork if you want to do this for free. Ultimately, what you're looking to do is you want to have a compensation guideline in your clinic. You want to have a guideline that tells you, hey, when I'm hiring a technician who's fairly entry level, my minimum rate is going to be this, and my maximum is going to be this. And I'm going to try to never go below my minimum or above my maximum, and unless it's an extreme situation, but that's going to give you some control. And then you've got another range. Let's say an experienced technician, maybe you call it a senior technician. Maybe that has a different range, and that person has more responsibilities, and so that's a higher dollar amount. The minimum is higher and the maximum is higher, and so that now you have another guideline to help you when you decide that Joey is now doing senior technician level work, and you're going to put Joey into that title. Then you're going to pay Joey commensurate with that pay range. And you can tell Joey, hey, I'm going to give you a certain raise that goes along with this title change. And now I know, you as the administrator, kind of what that new range is for Joey. And so when Joey has their annual raise, when Joey's getting close to the maximum or not. Or when you make Joey a job offer for that promotion, that you don't want to go below the minimum. Okay? At some point, you may want to share your pay ranges with your team, and there is a real benefit to this. The benefit is they know what their promotion potential is. They know if they become a senior technician, they know what that might look like pay-wise. The other benefit is now you can start to put pay ranges in your job postings. And if you're going to start putting pay ranges in all of your job postings, you're going to see a benefit. And that is that when you put a pay range in a job posting, the experts are saying that you get something on the order of 2 or 3 or more times the number of applicants than if you don't have a pay range. And that's because people, they don't want to waste their time on jobs that don't pay well. The other thing that I want you to think about putting a pay range in a job posting is the best employees, if they don't see a pay range, they can just blow through that and skip your job posting because they're good. They know they're going to have choices. So why would they waste their precious hour after dinner before putting the kids to bed, or maybe they're sitting in bed because they've had a busy day and they only have 30 minutes to apply for a few jobs. And you want your job to be one of those jobs because great employees are busy just like everybody else. They're sitting in bed doing a couple job applications. You don't want to be that one job that doesn't have a pay range, that has this really annoying job application, really confusing job description, But you want that pay range to grab those folks because they'll skip by and they'll say, you know what, I've got 3 other jobs I could apply for. I've got a limited amount of time. I'm going to apply for these other jobs because they pay. It says what they pay. And those pay rates might even be less than what you're willing to pay, but because you don't have a pay rate range in there, you are going to lose out. I promise you 100% can guarantee that you will lose out on good people because you don't have a pay range in a job posting. That's a guarantee. So, and the other thing I would say is if you don't do your compensation research, it becomes a lot harder to know what kind of pay range you should put. And you're much more likely to tick off your employees with whatever pay range you put into your job postings because they're going to see, oh, we're hiring a senior technician and they make what? They make all that money? And if you've done your research, then you can confidently say, hey, this is our pay range. I'm going to stand behind that. And this is our pay structure. You don't even have to tell the employees necessarily what the pay structure is, but maybe hey, this is the pay structure I have built for myself. And if someone says they have a problem with it, then I've done my research and I know, or I feel confident in that. There's a lot of power in that confidence that comes with doing your research, and building those pay ranges for yourself. So, bottom line here is do your research, build a pay structure that you can believe in, and someday that you can share with your staff, because I really think that that's a good thing to be able to do. But at least have a guideline for yourself that you can use for recruiting and promotions and onboarding employees. You need to have some kind of a guideline that's based in reality and not just on your assumptions. That's it for today. Thanks for listening, and I'll look forward to chatting with you in another episode. Well, that brings this episode of Healthcare Leadership Live to a conclusion. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on your podcast app and share it with someone who would value the content. I promise to bring you more guests and content to help make you a better healthcare clinical leader. I also invite you to subscribe to my HR newsletter for healthcare leaders. You can find information about that at seasoned-advice.com. Now go out there and lead with confidence.